Welcome back. This is the surface modeling portion of this course, and in the next several lessons, we'll be looking at many of the surface modeling tools that Inventor Fusion provides. Many tools in the surface modeling environment work the same way that they do when you're solid modeling. Now, just in case you're not familiar with the concept of surface modeling, I'm going to take a couple minutes to talk about what a surface actually is. A surface is more than a thin shell. In my graphic area, I've got a model. It's a cube, an extruded solid. I can use a solid piece of metal to create this cube, or I could use something like aluminum foil. The difference would be that the cube made from aluminum foil is hollow. So if we keep this analogy going, we could say that a hollow cube is kind of built from surfaces. Technically, foil is not a surface since it still has some thickness, even if it's very thin. What's different about a surface is that it has zero thickness. It has no mass. You are not able to assign materials to surfaces. When we create a solid, like you see in my graphic area, we've created 6 surfaces. If we stitch them together to create an enclosed volume, it becomes a solid. You might be wondering why we need surfaces in the first place when we can just use solids, and this is true to some extent. After all, the end goal of most design is usually a solid, which you eventually put on a production line. For example, surface modeling of automotive bodies is never just left in the surface environment with zero thickness. It's always used to generate a car, a solid of some kind. What's convenient and useful and pretty cool about working with surfaces is that you've got more flexibility, especially when you're dealing with complex geometry. CATIA is the 3D CAD program that gives you the most flexibility in terms of surface design and modeling, and that's why it happens to be the priciest as well. SOLIDWORKS and Inventor do give you a good set of tools for surface design and modeling. Inventor Fusion doesn't have as many tools as its big sister Inventor, but you can still create a pretty complex geometric entity pretty quickly using Inventor Fusion. Having said all that, let's try an example so you can see how working with surfaces can have some advantages over working with solids. Let's right-click on this face, Sketch, and New Sketch. Activate the Spline tool, and place our spline here. Right-click and OK to end the spline, and stop sketch. Let's insert another sketch on this face. Right-click, New Sketch. Another spline. Close the spline with a double click and click Stop Sketch. Let's bring in the surface modeling tools now. As you can see, we've got many of the same tools that we had in the solid modeling environment. Let's activate the Loft command. Let's select the 2 splines. Here's our preview of the loft. Let's click OK. Now let's activate the Thicken tool. So when we thicken a surface, we're turning it into a solid. I'll select the surface and let's give it some thickness now, 5 millimeters. We'll use the Intersect Boolean option and click OK. As you can see, in just a few seconds, I've created a pretty complex solid. So when people refer to surfaces, they are generally referring to these more complex shapes. Now that's not always the case. Surface modeling can give you more efficiency and flexibility when you're creating simple models as well. Surfaces can be used as references, for example. Now, having said all this, you may not even need to work with surfaces in your industry. There may be faster and more efficient ways to arrive at your end goal, which tends to be a solid that's destined for production. In many cases, it is possible to create a workaround and to work without surfaces. However, without surface design, some engineering work can be very difficult to achieve and pretty time-consuming. As your experience with Inventor Fusion accumulates, you'll develop some better instincts and some understanding of when it's more appropriate for you to use surface design or when solid modeling will get you to your result faster and more efficiently. In our next several tutorials, we'll be learning about how to create surfaces, how to stitch them together, how to extend them, unstitch them, trim them, patch them, and so on. And this concludes our introduction to surface design with Inventor Fusion.